Hey everyone, welcome to this video about getting organised. Last time we talked about to-do lists and the power that to-do lists have to really keep you motivated, keep you on task, and try and help kind of get rid of distractions and focus on what really matters. But this time I'm going to be talking about how to find more time in the day. So people often ask me how I find the time for everything. And really what I want to talk about is time, how to make the best use of your time, how to make sure that you're not wasting time. Really, how you can take your 24-hour day and look at that in the best way possible to not just keep you on task, getting more stuff done, but actually how you can keep that and make it sustainable. So not just do everything and panic, a kind of sustainable workflow that works for a really long time. But before we start, we've got to thank our sponsor. Thank you very much to Integrity. This video is very kindly sponsored by them. They're a bug bounty platform like HackerOne and BugCrowd. They're smaller though, and they focus on European customers. You don't need to be in Europe to hack on them. It's just that their customers tend to be more focused in Europe. They're huge supporters of the bug bounty community, sponsoring not just my content, but other creators, and not just even YouTubers, but they have sponsored newsletters, as well as videos, and I'm really happy to work with them. I know a lot of people have already heard this and who have already signed up, and actually some people have found their first bugs on Integrity, and that makes me really happy to hear. For others, they participate in XSS challenges. I see discussions on my Discord whenever one gets released, and I'm really happy for everybody. I love hearing these stories. Please do tell me more about the first bugs you find. So yeah, just please do tell me. I love hearing about it. If you want to sign up, you can do so on my link on screen, which is go.integrity.com/Katie. It's in the video description. It's on screen now. go.integrity.com/Katie. So let's go on with the rest of the video. So this is my joke. When I do talks, I get asked to, give a bio, introduce myself, and you kind of have this slide on all of your slide decks, which is like, I'm worth listening to and here's why. And my kind of joke with this is, my name is Katie, I'm a PhD student, educational YouTuber, occasional bug bounty hunter, and I'm still waiting for the Nobel Prize for more hours in the day. But actually to kind of manage these kind of three tasks, in case you didn't know, this is the final year of my PhD, I'm still writing my thesis. And I finish in February, so I've got a month left now. I still try and make videos every other week at the moment, just because my workload with my PhD has gotten so high. And yeah, bug bounty occasionally. And this takes an awful lot of organisation, time management. I have to really think ahead of all of the responsibilities I've got to do and work out how best to spend my time. So this is my kind of too long, didn't read, didn't watch. We talked before about to-do lists, and the one that I really like is getting things done. This week what we're going to be talking about is how to use time specifically. And before I showed you OmniFocus and a bunch of other suggestions, but this week I'm going to be using Toggle. But that is the too long, didn't watch. So with that in mind, you probably don't need to implement all of my solutions, especially for something like time management, because just because they work for me doesn't mean they work for you. I juggle a lot in my day-to-day life, so I have to be like hyper organized. But you maybe just need a better way of managing to-do lists. Maybe you just want to try out some time tracking, whatever. You don't have to look at my kind of way of organizing myself and follow it exactly. And in fact, as we'll talk about, that's probably not a great idea. So before we talked about this idea of what to do, and this week we're going to be talking about when to do it, which is, now we know what we want to do, how do we actually fit everything we need to do into a single day? And that kind of boils down to this one concept, which is using our time effectively. We know what we have to do. We're really looking at ways to maximize time, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to push ourselves every single day. We'll get tired, demotivated, and that can have very serious health effects. It can make you stressed, and if you're stressed, you're more likely to make mistakes. It can also mean that you are more likely to get sick as well. Stressed people are more susceptible. But we want to make sure we're not procrastinating too much, because it's okay to take a break, but procrastinating, putting something off, it really doesn't do us any favors. It really just means we put more stress on ourselves. So this is kind of the concept of what we're going to be talking about today, which is using our time effectively. So with that in mind, the first thing we need to talk about is trying to do everything. Good time management doesn't mean doing everything on your to-do list ASAP. It really doesn't. What it means is it's about balance. It's balancing everything we need to do with our overall energy levels, with our motivation, and trying to keep ourselves in a position where, we feel productive, we feel like we've done something, but we actually haven't killed ourselves in the process. So one such balance is this idea of deep work versus shallow work. And it was popularized by this book by Cal Newport. I'm sure if you've ever gone into productivity, you've probably heard of this book. There's quite a lot in the book I don't really agree with, but I do actually really like the way about thinking about deep versus shallow work. So what is deep versus shallow work? So deep work is our lots of focus. It is what we need to do. It's that big project. So they require a lot of focus, they're more tiring, it creates the majority of your valuable work. And what does that mean? Well, when we talk about value, we're not necessarily talking about money, we're talking about what has value to us. So for example, something that's quite hard is hacking. Actually hacking something is quite hard, it takes a lot of time. That would be an example of kind of deep work. Then you have shallow work, which is kind of the opposite, which are quick tasks that don't require intense thinking. They're not as tiring, but they make us feel productive, as in we've ticked something off of our to-do list. And that might make us feel like we're achieving something, but actually all we're doing is getting progress on these shallow works. We actually want to be making progress on deep works, because that's our valuable time, that's our hacking, that's our practice time. And shallow work is things like, looking on HackerOne and scrolling down and figuring out a target you want to look at, or looking on Twitter and looking for write-ups, or just reading write-ups without actually getting that value out of them. So what people tend to do is, this is a good example here, where Bill Gates has Think Weeks, where he isolates himself, which is do nothing but read and think big thoughts. And this other idea of isolating yourself to write a book is kind of what the thesis is. But really, what we want to do is not just only do deep work, because if we only do deep work, we will eventually kind of be in a position where we can't continue. So we need to balance it. So deep work may include tasks like hacking a target, reading about vulnerabilities, as in like taking notes, and that proper studying, or practicing, like hours of uninterrupted time where you just need to sit down and work. But these get really tiring over time, and actually you can't just do deep work. Shallow work includes tasks like choosing potential targets, watching a video but not really paying attention, whatever. Now, it's better to balance shallow work and deep work and breaks. So here's a kind of breakdown of this. You want to learn how to hack. Big task. So what you need to do is you need to figure out all of the resources you want to watch. You want to kind of maybe organize them into priorities. And then we want to look at that and then go, okay, that is our deep work. That's our shallow work. We need to break it down. But to actually hack, we need to be doing deep work. We need hours of uninterrupted time. But that's really tiring. If you hack all the time, I guarantee you will lose motivation. You will get really tired. And you'll probably end up giving up because it's hard to do that. We need to balance this kind of shallow work, deep work, and breaks. And that's really hard. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know exactly how to do that, because I don't. I end up pushing myself too much sometimes, and sometimes I don't do any work. So there's not really this kind of easy thing of do 8 hours of this and 9 hours of that or whatever per week. So what I recommend when you look at balance is to write down what you think your deep and shallow work tasks are. And we'll go over what you should do with that, but just keep that in mind as I go through the rest of the video. So the other thing is being honest with yourself, especially when it comes to time management. One of the hardest things about improving your productivity is that we, as in humans, are just not honest. And one example, kind of famous example, is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that we tend to think we know everything when we have very little knowledge. And we overestimate our knowledge. Like, we'll go, oh, I've only just started, but I know everything. But actually, because we've overestimated our knowledge, we're not really being honest with ourselves. And one kind of outcome of this is that we may spend we may not be honest about how much time we actually spend that might be more kind of wasted. I don't think all time is wasted. It means stuff like specifically procrastination, spending too much time watching YouTube, letting ourselves be distracted even though we know we have to work. So one of the best things you can do to try and combat this effect is to work out your time wasters. You shouldn't be critical when you waste time. And it's really easy to get into the trap of, I'm not being productive, I am literally the worst person at everything. But actually, that doesn't really help you. That won't help you become a better hacker. That won't help you become more productive. That's just going to make you kind of depressed. And it's much better to be thoughtful about what your time wasters are and kind of limiting your exposure to them, whether that's giving them up completely or saying, okay, this I'm going to do from this time to this time, and I'm not going to let myself get distracted. Like, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter, you might want to block it until you're taking a break. You might want to block it completely and give up social media. But the best way to figure out what your time wasters are and to find that honesty is actually to track your time. So I do this, I track my time. I was given by HackerOne for speaking at one of their events a stream deck, and I don't really stream, so I don't really use it for streaming, but instead I have a bunch of macros on there which link to Toggle. So I have like a little tiny little screen with a bunch of buttons in front of me, so I can click on them and then it will say, okay, I'm working on whatever, video slides, I'm working on recording, I'm working on editing during that time. So when you look at kind of a week, you can see where you're spending your time and actually how honest you're being. And that's really important, especially when it comes to like social media use. Now, let's talk about social media. If you're worried about your ability to focus because you spend a lot of time on social media, the best thing you can do without giving it up completely and feeling a bit isolated, I know we're all feeling isolated because of coronavirus, but especially social media, it's like designed to make you distract you. And turning off notifications, making sure the only notifications that come through to you are the important ones, you'll feel more in control, and you can make that choice. So you're not giving Twitter the choice to distract you, you're making the choice to take a break. And that's a really powerful idea. Especially because they're red and they're bold and they appear on your phone. Maybe they light your phone screen up. Getting in the habit of doing something like taking your phone, flipping it over so the screen is not facing you or the screen doesn't light up can be a huge help. Turning off sounds like notification sounds can be a huge help. Making that conscious choice to check social media kind of brings you back into not relying on it. And one thing I'm going to mention as well is, I know one of the reasons why social media use, especially in the last especially in 2020, has been so common is because we can feel quite isolated. I would suggest making sure you connect with your friends on a regular basis so you don't feel so lonely. And I totally get this because I've been feeling lonely. I haven't seen friends in months. We've just come out yet another lockdown in the UK. But it totally is lonely, and having friends and going, oh, next week I'll be playing D&D with my friends has actually helped me curb my social media use because I've still got a human connection to something, if that makes sense. Okay, so when you do this, when you remove social media distractions, when you look at your time wasters and figure out how to manage them, what kind of happens then? And then we go back to our balance, which is blocking out time. So this is quite a weird strategy, perhaps to a lot of people. But time blocking is where you block out every hour of your day. You say from 2 till 4, I'm going to write a video. From 4 till 5, I'm going to hack. From 5 till 7, I'm going to do something else. From 9 to 5, I'm going to work, whatever. And on Monday, I'm going to do something different to Tuesday, do something different on the weekends. And this is called time blocking. And it can be really helpful in order to give yourself something to do and make you feel like you're part of a schedule, especially for people who are maybe outside of school, where in school you're kind of given a schedule and that kind of keeps you in that brainwave. So if you're in maths and you're in that classroom, you are like in the maths mode. If you're in an English classroom, you're probably not thinking about maths. And this is the same kind of concept. But instead, we're adults and we purposely put this on ourselves. And this isn't mine. This is one I got off the internet because I have like quite a lot of stuff blocked out. And what I do is I just put in kind of vague ideas. So quite a lot of my time is spent thesis writing, thesis corrections for work, meetings for work. And then on the kind of weekends and the evenings, I've then got everything from making videos to hacking to reading or going through my reading list. But actually I also have stuff like breaks. I have lunch scheduled and I have breaks between different tasks so I can go on a walk. So it's not just doing like the entire to-do list, putting everything on a calendar. It's giving yourself that time to switch brainwaves and switch modes. That can be really helpful. As to how to do this, this is Google Calendar. I've used Google Calendar. I find a whiteboard is more effective to me because I get up and then that kind of makes me feel like I'm moving. Sounds kind of odd, but it makes me feel like I'm moving and it kind of gets me in a slightly different way of thinking. But when we look at that deep work and shallow work, this is what you can balance it on. Your deep work are those big blocks of time, and your shallow work is an hour, half an hour. And then you can visually see, okay, I've got a big block of work there, a small block of work there. That might be too much or too little. So this is how I'm going to manage it, and that can be really helpful. So one thing that you tend to find, especially with deep work and especially with time blocking, is your motivation will start to wane, especially when you first start out doing something like time blocking. Even if you put in breaks, you can lose motivation so easily. It's really difficult to adjust to this kind of idea of trying not to get distracted to like how social media works, which is you get a dopamine hit when you check Twitter and you see you've got a notification, or that kind of mindless scrolling that social media promotes in you. So it's really difficult to adjust to kind of cutting that out of your life. And one of the things that kind of happens from that is really losing your motivation. So my advice, if you start to find your motivation, you're struggling a little bit, is to give yourself time to adjust and focus on those completing tasks that I talked about before, because completing a task will give you that dopamine hit. But you know what? It's so much better than social media dopamine hits are, because not only do you get that lovely hit of feel-good brain chemicals, you will also get the feeling of being productive and achieving something, which is so much more powerful in the long run. So I did this talk for Bug Crowd Level Up called Sticking With It, How to Choose Target and Stay Motivated. And I'm going to suggest you watch that video all about motivation and how being motivated works, because I think it's probably the best way of explaining things in a hacking context, because I am talking at this point about all aspects of my life, but specifically looking at the ways to be motivated, gaining mastery over something, is something that applies very strongly to hacking. It's getting better at hacking. That's going to make you feel really motivated, even over a long period of time. And from that, what you might find is you actually get tired, especially when you first get started out. Maybe you can keep that motivation going, but if you're finding yourself being tired, maybe even being unmotivated sometimes that's a good sign you need to schedule in more breaks. Now I'm going to recommend the Pomodoro technique. It's a tomato in Italian. It's just like tomato timers. But this won't necessarily work for everybody or work for every type of task, but it's a good place to start. So the first step in this technique is to plan out everything you need to do. So this could be like a reading list if you're doing or a reading/watching list where you're going, okay, I need to read this chapter of this book. Maybe you want to also read a write-up. Maybe then you want to watch one of my videos. Maybe you want to watch someone else's videos. Whatever. Put that in like a big list of tasks. You then do one Pomodoro. So you put the timer set for 25 minutes. Once it goes off, you take a 5-minute break. So during those 25 minutes, you commit yourself to only work on those tasks until it runs out. And then after you've done those 25 minutes, then you can take a break, do whatever you want. Once you do 4 of these 25-minute timers, you then take a much longer break. So that can be 10 or 15 minutes. If you are kind of struggling and feeling tired, and you think that maybe it's because you're not scheduling enough breaks, I recommend something like this. You can change the intervals. You can make the timer an hour and then take a 10-minute break and then a 30-minute break after doing 4 of them. You can turn it into shorter sessions, whatever tends to work for kind of the way your brain works. And it does take trial and error to figure out what that is. It's not, I can't just tell you this is how it works and this is what will work for you, because everybody is different. It is more structured though. But this kind of goes on to the next point, which is how do you actually make more hours in the day? You have to reflect. Quite a lot of the process of improving your productivity overall, not just in hacking, but in all aspects of your life, is reflecting on it, is thinking about what is working, what isn't working. Be honest with yourself. Like, do you think that you're getting too tired? Do you think you're getting too distracted? Look at ways you can mitigate those. Is it a case of you are one of those people that has to curb their social media use? Do you need to look at blocking tools for your own sake? Do you need to, for example, put your phone in another room? Are you somebody who's working too hard, getting too tired, and you need to schedule in more breaks? And this is quite a lot of this is asking yourself what you think, and that's so difficult. It is not something that is easy, and it takes a weekly reflective process to really work out what's working for you. One of my favorite ideas is to talk to people, find out what works for them, and then steal them. Because when you see how other people work, you learn a lot about the way that you work. And in fact, for me, one thing that's taught me a lot about how I work, especially over the last few weeks, is writing my thesis. It's a huge, huge book I have to write. And from that, I've learned a lot about how I prefer to do deep work, how I prefer to do shallow work, how I prefer to do time blocking, where for me I have to listen to somebody talk to just drown out my own thoughts and to keep myself on task. And that's not necessarily something that would be obvious, but when I was watching some talks, reading some articles, other people said it works for them, so I tried it. And I've got to say this, and I've got to stress this, which is you have to get rid of stuff that doesn't work. If it doesn't work for you, yeet it, get rid of it, throw it away. You do not need to waste your time trying to do some productivity hack when it just has no value to you, because that is a complete time waster. It is completely unhelpful. And you really need to be focusing on keeping the stuff that does work. Keep the stuff that does work, throw away the stuff that doesn't. There is no productivity solution that will do everything for you. you have to have this reflective process on your own. So I want to thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope this was useful, and my kind of reflections on my own productivity process will help you. Thank you very much to Integrity for sponsoring my content. I really don't take having an advertiser lightly on my channel. Like, honestly, I don't. I really like to work with like products that I actually support myself, and I turn down sponsorships that I don't think are right for my channel, or things that I might feel a bit uncomfortable promoting. But I really do like Integrity. They do amazing things for the community. It's allowed me in this past year of 2020 to make so many improvements to my channel. Like, I have an entire audio setup and the quality is night and day. I now have the ability to do a face cam, or I will in the very near future, to add, so you can watch my arms wave around. And yeah, making those like investments in my channel has been huge. So I really like them because one of the things that they do great is they interact with their community. A lot of bug bounty platforms will kind of leave you if you have questions, but actually I've seen Integrity answer hacker questions. They are always replying to hackers when there's problems. They're quite happy to do like events and obviously promote content. So please really do give them a lot of love. You can sign up with my link on screen, go.integrity.com/Katie. It's in the video description. That's go.integrity.com/Katie. And now I have to thank all of my wonderful patrons who have very kindly sponsored my content, supported my content on Patreon, which is Gynvael, James Clee, Niklas, Penny, Ram, Wardell Castles, and Strongbeard. Thank you very much to everybody who supports my content, whether you are watching, liking, subscribing. It really does mean a lot to me. And I may not be able to reply to all the comments I get, but I absolutely do read them. So thank you very much for all of your support. And have a great rest of your day, everybody. I will see you next week with our Christmas special for this year. So bye, everybody.